These are the most shocking, interesting, historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 10,000 subscribers. Tourists gathered at the Wawona tree, a famous tunnel sequoia, in Yosemite National Park in California in 1908. This tree was a popular attraction due to the passage through its base, allowing strollers and cars to pass. Lumberjacks pose in front of a massive Douglas fir, prepared for felling in Washington State, 1899. Axes and large two-handed miter saws were used to make incisions and cut down the trunk. A man sits near a wooden house and manually repairs a fishing net using a simple tension device. The scene was shot in 1912 and shows the daily life and work of fishermen. A man, a woman, and a girl are standing near a wooden building, showing friendly attention and smiles. The photo was taken in South Carolina in 1912 and reflects the familiar atmosphere of American life at that time. The photo shows lumberjacks sitting on scaffolding around a giant sequoia tree with a team of 10 harnessed mules in front of them. The picture was taken in California in 1917 and illustrates large-scale logging operations using traction animals to transport timber. An FSA borrower builds a new gate for his farm in Prairie Farms, Montgomery, Alabama, 1939. This project was part of the Farm Security Administration's program to support farmers during the Great Depression. Several farmers gathered around a table in a dimly lit room to play cards on an early winter morning in Woodstock, Vermont, 1939. The frame shows traditional work clothes and an element of typical leisure time for rural residents. Visitors to Hialeah Park watch horse racing in Miami, Florida, 1939. This spectacle was a popular entertainment gathering many spectators enjoying the competition and the atmosphere of the big event. Poor farmers lie close to each other in a temporary overnight shelter in a warehouse, waiting for tobacco sales in Durham, North Carolina, 1939. This placement was a necessary measure due to the lack of funds for the hotel and the long wait for bidding. A group of men pose standing on top of a pile of recently felled trees in a rural area near New York City. The 1907 photograph illustrates logging methods and working life in the early 20th century in the United States. Ballerina and actress Riki Soma performs yoga pose on a mat at home with her father and children, 1947. The scene was captured by photographer Lisa Larson and demonstrates the popularity of wellness practices among creative people of the post-war era. This photograph, taken in Boston at Quincy Market around 1900, captures the typical urban interior of a home where a family gathers for home activities and recreation. A group of people watches a demonstration of yoga poses against a backdrop of psychedelic scenery, USA, 1970. The event was documented by photographer Ralph Morse and reflects an expressive style of self-expression in the wake of interest in spiritual practices and psychedelia. Two residents of Woodstock, Vermont, talk near parked cars on a snowy street in March 1940. Architecture and transportation highlight the features of the American small-town period before World War II. A postman climbs through huge snowdrifts near a house to deliver correspondence after a heavy snowfall in Woodstock, Vermont, 1940. Large icicles are visible on the roof, highlighting the harsh winter conditions of the northeastern United States. Lumberjacks are working in the forests of Michigan, stacking freshly sawn logs for further shipment to the sawmill by rail. In the foreground, you can see a steam locomotive designed to transport wood, and workers pose with tools. On a winter day in 1940, a garbage man in Woodstock, Vermont, carries garbage containers on a sled along a snowy city street. The car is used to tow sleds, a typical practice in heavy snowfall conditions to keep the city clean. An employee on a farm near Woodstock, Vermont, pours water into a car radiator on a cold morning to avoid the cost of antifreeze, 1940. This practice was common among rural residents, which helped save money. Farmers from the vicinity of Woodstock, Vermont, deliver milk cans every morning to the collection point, where they are loaded into a city truck for further transportation, March 1940. The photo shows a large-scale banquet procession with a giant pig figure being carried along the street among a crowd of spectators. The scene refers to a massive Soviet holiday or demonstration, probably dedicated to agricultural achievements. A man is leading a horse with a large gas mask on its muzzle, an example of protective equipment for animals used during the Second World War. Such a device was designed to protect horses from exposure to toxic gases. A man helps a cow to board a city bus, which looks unusual for public transport. French inscriptions can be seen on the billboards, indicating the use of the stage to promote dairy products. The photo shows a wagon used by British military engineers to lay telephone cables, and a group of soldiers on horseback in the village of Divinskaya Bereznik, 1919. In the summer of 1919, British soldiers near the shore in Divinsky Bereznik had the opportunity to wash their clothes during the White Night. Despite access to water, none of them swims. All are limited to household chores on the shore. A mule loaded with a disassembled 3.7-inch British mountain howitzer stands next to a British soldier on the Divina front, village of Troitsa, 1919. This distribution of cargo made it easier to transport heavy weapons over rough terrain. The picture shows British servicemen with stripes in the form of a white five-pointed star on a blue field, which indicates that they belong to the Northern Russian Relief Forces. The leader of the Blackfeet tribe is sitting in a traditional headdress, and an employee of the Smithsonian studio is preparing a phonograph to record his performances or stories. Tourists park their car right under a giant fallen tree in Sequoia National Park in the winter of 1951. The snow-covered road allows the car to easily squeeze under the trunk while people explore and take pictures at the top of the tree. Astronauts Donald Slayton and Thomas Stafford, participants of the Soyuz Apollo program, study Russian in classes at the Lyndon Johnson Space Center in 1974. This training was an important part of the joint 1975 mission aimed at international cooperation in space between the USSR and the USA. The combined military band of the 45th and 46th Battalions of the Royal Fusiliers plays in front of local peasants in the village of Troitsa, 1919. The photo shows villagers watching the performance of national musical groups. A perfume spray machine was installed in public places in 1952 and provided a selection of popular brands such as Chanel, Taboo, and others. The user tossed a coin and pressed a button to receive a perfume spray. A group of soldiers poses inside a mock-up of the giant Z-3 airship, creating a mock aerial escape scene over a German city, probably during the First World War. One of the participants holds a sign with an inscription that gives the production a humorous character. In the photo, a koala carefully drinks from a spoon next to a cup in Australia, 1900. The scene illustrates a rare moment of manual animal care at the beginning of the 20th century and highlights the unique features of the local fauna. In the port of Arkhangelsk, at the Cathedral Pier, in the summer of 1919, crowds of civilians are preparing to evacuate amid the approaching hostilities. People in carts with belongings and luggage surround the steamer, waiting for boarding and departure. The historical picture shows the members of the comedy film group The Three Stooges, which actually included 6 artists, many of whom were brothers. A woman in a blue swimsuit, surrounded by a flock of fish, uses an unusual underwater breathing apparatus at the bottom of a freshwater spring, probably in Florida in the 1950s. The composition and the unusual diving suit create a mystical atmosphere. Cyclists prepare for the start of the famous Giro d'Italia multi-day race in 1973, standing at the fence and leaving their bikes nearby. The scene shows the behind-the-scenes moments of sports competitions and the human side of professional cycling. In Copenhagen in 1936, there was a huge coat sale when the store building was completely covered with rows of outerwear from the roof to the sidewalk. This design attracted the attention of many buyers and became a notable city event. In the collaged photo, 4 German soldiers look like they are sitting on a Europa plain over a picturesque area with a river, boats, and urban buildings. This artistic setting is typical for military postcards of the first half of the 20th century. A young man in traditional clothes plays an oriental bagpipe against a stone wall, early 20th century. The bagpipe, made from a leather bag and wooden pipes, was a widespread folk instrument in the eastern Mediterranean regions. On the terrace of a building dating back to the 1920s, a group of women are taking rifle shooting classes under the supervision of an instructor. The scene reflects the growing interest in sports shooting and self-defense among women in the post-war era. The picture shows a parade of Allied troops under the British flag in the snow-covered Murmansk in November 1918, on the occasion of the end of the First World War. The soldiers are lined up in a column and pass by the headquarters buildings, marking the end of the fighting. In 1966, in a crowd on the streets of London, people raise mirrors to see the reflection of Queen Elizabeth II during her passage. This method made it possible to see the monarch in the crowd, long before the advent of smartphones and the mass craze for selfies. An astronaut is training in a swimming pool in a spacesuit, simulating zero-gravity conditions before a NASA mission, probably in the 1960s. Such tests were necessary to prepare for work in space, but they were different from the real sensations outside the atmosphere. In 1925, ballerinas perform a dance on the edge of the roof of a skyscraper in New York, demonstrating skill and courage over the urban landscape. The shot impresses with a combination of grace and height, as well as the atmosphere of a daring jazz-era show. Loggers in Idaho work on the river, clearing congestion from tree trunks, the 1930s. The scene shows the hard and dangerous work of rafting timber, typical of North American logging at that time. Children play in a vacant lot among old buildings, and the Capitol building, Washington, USA, stands on the horizon. The scene shows that even in the most central city of the country, you can find corners for simple children's entertainment. The photo shows polar explorer and writer Peter Freuchen with his wife Dagmar Freuchen-Gale. Freuchen is known for his tall stature and the fact that he used a wooden leg after amputation. In the extreme conditions of the Arctic, he showed amazing resourcefulness. Once he cut his way out from under an avalanche with a knife made from his own feces. A group of British underwater sailors are receiving solar therapy, using an ultraviolet lamp to make up for vitamin D deficiency before a long dive. This procedure was recommended to maintain the health of the crew in the absence of natural sunlight on submarines. In 1956, the Tennessee Dining Hall had segregation laws that prohibited black patrons from sitting at the counter with whites. The photo shows the result of these restrictions. A white man is sitting at the counter, and a black woman is forced to stand. Two soldiers with bottles pose against the backdrop of a backdrop with a huge heron, creating an ironic or festive stage photo. Such pictures were popular during the First World War as a way to cheer up. A group of Middle Easterners in traditional clothes poses at an ancient stone entrance built into massive masonry, the beginning of the Declassified century. The building probably served as part of a defensive complex or a storage facility, reflecting the architectural traditions of the region. Logging workers in West Virginia in the 1930s used pawn hooks to move a large log to the river for subsequent rafting. The picture shows the physically demanding and dangerous work of lumberjacks during the heyday of the American forestry industry. In Arkhangelsk in 1970, there was a parking lot for children's pedal cars with a bright sign, Karapuz Taxi. Children could rent miniature cars and drive around the park, which was a popular Soviet-era pastime. In the photo, a group of Australian Aborigines participates in an action dedicated to the Day of Mourning and the demand for civil rights, 1938. The posters and inscriptions reflect the struggle of the indigenous population for equal rights and attention to social injustice. A young woman poses for a portrait in a dark dress, partially covering her face with her hand, 1882. A restrained smile and a modest pose reflect the atmosphere of the Victorian era and its ideas about femininity. In 1988, the first official beauty contest was held in the USSR when the participants first appeared on stage in swimsuits for the jury and the audience. The event became a landmark event of the Perestroika era and opened a new page in Soviet popular culture. A store at a crossroads in Melrose, Louisiana, in June 1940, combined a bar, jukebox, gas station, and alcohol outlet, serving locals and cotton plantation workers. In March 1991, thousands of Albanian refugees were trying to get to Italy. Overcrowded ships were approaching the shore, and people clung to the sides and descended directly into the port. The scene became one of the symbols of mass migration during the crisis period after the fall of the socialist regime in Albania. A group of young people pose with model airplanes against the background of a collection of toy aircraft, circa the 1940s. Such school or club aviation modeling classes were popular and promoted technical creativity. A guy and a girl pose in the 1920s, showing a romantic relationship and typical clothing for the era, a sports jacket and an airy dress. In the girl's hands is a handbag with a large bow, which emphasizes the festiveness of the moment. A boy in a suit stands near a small table with an early camera, probably preparing to take a picture, 1880s. A white cat is sitting comfortably on a high chair next to it, creating a homely atmosphere. Gas station employees in Texas, 1940s, served women by offering drinks at the car window, dressed in short shorts and the cowboy boots. The scene shows an unusual style of work uniforms for its time and the atmosphere of the era of road cafes. The photo shows an overcrowded gold mine in Brazil during the gold rush, when thousands of workers mine the ore by hand. The multi-level cliffs, stairs, and dense crowds reflect the harsh working conditions and the massive desire for wealth. An employee of a textile factory in the USSR, 1960, manages the process of winding or processing threads on a production line. Soldiers of the Honor Guard are warming up on the parade ground in Moscow, 1990. One of the participants demonstrates a high level of physical fitness and discipline by performing stretching in a combat uniform. A group of barefoot children selects books from a mobile library in Appalachia, USA, probably in the 1930s and 1940s. The scene reflects the importance of education and access to literature for rural areas during a time of economic hardship. A group of children rollerblading through the streets of a city in the USA, 1970. The scene conveys the atmosphere of street games and the mass passion for roller sports of that era. A child holds a wombat, a marsupial animal common in Australia, on a children's bike. The scene was shot in a courtyard or zoo and illustrates the unusual moments of children's communication with exotic fauna. A girl carefully removes a splinter from a boy's leg on the street, 1910. The scene reflects everyday care and simple medical practices in the daily lives of children of the early 20th century. An unusual hairstyle and beard in the style of Man on the Moon are captured in a photograph from 1895. His hair and beard are arranged in such a way that they form a prominent upward and forward curl, demonstrating the extravagance of men's fashion and hairdressing experiments of the late 19th century. Young girls in traditional Norwegian costumes board a boat near the picturesque shore, 1890s. The picture against the background of mountains and a lake reflects the rural life and national customs of Norway at the end of the 19th century. In 1910, two women in long dresses and hats cross a stream, holding each other's hand. The picture captures a moment of relaxation and friendly support on a hot summer day against the backdrop of nature. Children in festive costumes hold large decorative numbers forming the date of 1907, wishing them a happy new year. In 1939, the mother took the child outside, placing a sign asking him not to kiss in order to protect him from the spread of viral infections. This warning reflects precautionary measures in an era of disease outbreaks. In 1928, vendors carried large branches of mistletoe, traditionally used for festive decorations and ceremonies, on a Paris street. Mistletoe was especially popular during the Christmas season as a symbol of good luck and well-being. In 1977, extreme athlete George Willig climbed the outer wall of the South Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. His daring stunt at an altitude of over 400 meters earned him the nickname the Fly Man and widespread fame. Children in fancy dress stand in front of two people posing as a cow using a theatrical mask and costume, circa the 1920s. In the picture, a group of people pose in a self-made passenger car, the USSR, probably in the 1960s and 1970s. Such cars were often assembled by enthusiasts from available parts when it was impossible to buy a factory car. A worker manually unloads sand from the back of a Soviet truck, USSR, 1950s-1960s. Such labor-intensive processes were a common part of construction work when there was a shortage of mechanization. In 1994, Michael Jackson hosted an entertainment event for orphan children at the Neverland Ranch, where he rode behind the wheel of an electric car. Such events were part of his charity work and support for children. A worker poses on a giant stump as tall as a man, next to a felled tree, USA, late 19th, early 20th century. Such large-scale logging was common for industrial timber extraction. Around 1925, the battleship USS Mississippi housed trained cats that could climb stairs into their hammock. In 1923, a Chevrolet passenger car accident occurred in the United States. The front axle wheel broke and the car ended up on its side. Passers-by gathered around the accident to consider the unusual situation. In 1919, a young woman runs a tanker truck designed to pump water in the city. The machine is equipped with special hoses and a reservoir, which reflects the level of technical progress of utilities at the beginning of the 20th century. In 1877, in England, public disinfectants worked on the streets to prevent the spread of dangerous infections, such as plague or smallpox. These specialists used sanitized wagons and special clothing to treat the infected areas. In 1920, there was an advertising campaign showing a car with pneumatic tires that successfully crossed the United States from coast to coast. Such a trip served as proof of the reliability of new rubber products for the mass market. In the 1930s, an American farmer showed a homemade vehicle powered by a goat running inside a large wheel. The design allowed the car to reach speeds of up to 15 km/h, and the second gantry at the top was used as a spare engine. In 1964, a group of young people conducted an unusual experiment, placing themselves inside and on the roof of a Volkswagen Beetle car to demonstrate its spaciousness. Such photo shoots were often used as promotions to emphasize the practicality and popularity of the Beetle among young people. In 1982, photographer Jay Maisel was captured among the huge number of Kodachrome slides that make up his photo archive. Such creative chaos was a typical working environment for collectors and professional photographers of the film photography era. In 1982, residents of a high-rise building in the GDR used the roof of the entrance as a simple sunbathing area. Such a courtyard solarium was a typical feature of Soviet and Eastern European residential areas of the era. A 1921 photograph shows a long-distance telephone exchange with equipment for transmitting telephone signals. The technical staff is busy servicing cables and setting up equipment, providing communication between cities. In the 1860s, a group of residents in fancy clothes went to a ball in Portree, Scotland. The stage allows you to see the style and everyday life of people of the 19th century, including costume details and everyday elements. In 1978, for the film Touch of the Jellyfish, an episode of a plane crash was created in the special effects pavilion using scale models of an airplane and a building. Before the advent of computer graphics, such scenes were often shot manually, similar to the methods used in the Soviet film, The Crew. In 1985, John Travolta performed the famous dance with Princess Diana during an official reception at the White House. This event has become one of the most famous and symbolic moments of British-American diplomacy in pop culture. In 1936, peasants sell fresh vegetables and fruits at a rural market, using antique scales to weigh goods. Such trade provided the local population with natural products and was an important part of the rural economy. Racing driver Lawrence Ray Weishaupt poses on a racing motorcycle of the early 20th century. He was considered one of the most famous motorcycle racers of his time. Weishar has repeatedly won American motorcycle races and contributed to the development of motorsport. A 1921 photograph shows a steam excavator involved in mining and loading stone. Workers load the trolleys using a massive bucket, and a steam engine drives all the mechanisms. In 1877, in London, a blind man earns a living by working as a poster man and advertising products right on the streets of the city. This form of employment was widespread among the poor and people with disabilities. In a 1928 photo, hop pickers from Kent County are working on high stilts to reach the top shoots of plants. This technique required an excellent sense of balance and physical dexterity. The picture shows the first official Formula One mechanic from Austria. The photo dates back to the beginning of the 20th century. Specialists of this profile provided training and maintenance of racing cars, contributing to the development of motorsport in the country. In 1922, a racing driver in a sports car stopped at a workshop on the Austrian border because of a torn tire. Such situations were typical for the early era of motorsport, when spare wheels were mounted directly on the car body for quick replacement. The railroad bridge over Dale Creek in Wyoming is shown in a photograph taken in 1885. By this time, the wooden supports had been replaced with metal ones, but the structures were still threatened by strong winds, which caused the trains to overcome a height of 38 meters at low speed. Actress Carrie Fisher, pictured in Norway during the filming of the movie The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. For scenes in snowy locations, real Arctic landscapes and snowmobiles were used, which provided the atmosphere of the planet hot. In 2010, a collector from California found an old photograph for $2, which turned out to be the famous Billy the Kid, one of the most famous bandits of the Wild West, famous for his wit and skill in shooting. After many years of examination, the 1878 photograph of Billy the Kid during the wedding was recognized as authentic. Its value is currently estimated at $5 million. The Bugatti Type 35 racing car is captured at the start of the 1920s competition, symbolizing the heyday of European auto racing. The Type 35 became famous for its record-breaking victories and became one of the most recognizable cars in the history of racing. American pilots aboard an aircraft carrier spend time with a mascot cat. July 1944, combat crews often kept animals to maintain morale and psychological support during rest periods. In 1923, drivers could order food from the comfort of their car next to the popular Victor's Dog fast food cafe. This format became the forerunner of modern drive-in establishments, reflecting the innovative approach to customer service at the beginning of the 20th century. Two girls dressed in traditional dresses send a letter to a mailbox in Germany, 1894. At that time, barefoot was common even among children from well-off families, especially in summer and in rural areas. In 1924, special taxi services for transporting dogs appeared in the United States, advertising excellent cars and polite drivers. This service was a novelty of the era and reflected the growing interest in pet care. The large alligator in the 1870s Louisiana photo weighs about 400 kilograms, making it one of the most impressive predators of the North American swamps. These alligator sizes resemble prehistoric reptiles from the distant past. Homemade sports cars with numbers 54 and 56 participate in the Capitals competitions on Red Square, Moscow, 1961. Engineers and racers design similar cars based on production models, embodying the enthusiasm of Soviet motorists and the desire for technological progress. Robert Downey Jr., Anthony Michael Hall, and Uma Thurman in a 1987 photo together. All three were among the most popular young Hollywood actors of the period and often appeared together in memorable photo shoots. A 1931 photograph shows the process of asphalting the Leningrad Highway in Moscow. A large number of people and special equipment participate in the work process, demonstrating the large-scale urban modernization of the Soviet era. A lumberjack stands on a huge fallen spruce trunk in the forest, circa 1918. The photo vividly illustrates the scale of logging and physical labor at the beginning of the 20th century. Two cats have settled inside a ship's cannon on the deck of a military vessel. The photo dates from shortly before the First World War. Sailors often kept animals on ships for comfort and rodent control. In the photo from 1924, the car is undergoing brake system testing on a steep urban slope. Such checks were an important part of the development of transport safety in the era of the formation of the mass automotive industry. The executioner from the Indian district of Rewa, 1903, is dressed in an intimidating costume, studded with iron spikes and equipped with a massive sword and shield. Such equipment not only inspired fear, but could also serve as a weapon in itself if there was no way to use a sword. The photo shows a homemade German mobile home built in 1922. The unique motorhome is made almost entirely of wood, decorated with flower boxes, and looks like a small chalet on wheels, combining mobility with everyday comfort. Audrey Hepburn is pictured in Rome in a 1954 photograph by Philip Halsman. The scene reflects the simplicity and naturalness of the actress, who has become a symbol of the era. The sailor of the sailing vessel, Pommern, demonstrates to the cat how to move along the shrouds, using the rigging as a training route. In the 1925 image, vaudeville performers in bright stage costumes act out a road breakdown near a modern car with an unusual pattern. The combination of theatricality and fashionable technique reflects the spirit of the jazz era and the heyday of entertainment shows. A damaged IS-2 heavy tank of the 6th Guards Tank Army is located on the street of Krušky, Czechoslovakia, 1945. Judging by the deployed turret, the crew continued to fire even after losing power and damaging the tracks. A 1990 home photo shows a young Shakira, the future global superstar of Latin and pop music. Already in her teens, Shakira showed creative abilities, preparing to conquer the stages and the hearts of the audience. In the 1920s, a woman sells family jewelry at a Moscow market. The scene reflects the difficult time after the revolution and the Civil War. For many citizens, the sale of valuables has become a forced way of survival in conditions of devastation and economic instability. Lumberjacks are working with a giant sequoia tree in a California forest, using special saws to cut down the tree. The scale of the trunk is impressive, showing the outstanding age and size of the sequoia, one of the most majestic trees on the planet. The cat climbed onto the radar antenna on a ship in Boston between 1917 and 1934, earning the nickname Radio Koshka. The car makes an advertising climb up a steep slope in 1925, proving the capabilities of technology to the general public. A poster with 12 Reasons to Buy Nash is attached to the car, reflecting the spirit of the promotions of that time. Guests enjoy winter cocktails at the bar, cut down right in the snow, at the famous Palace Hotel in St. Moritz, 1947. The magnificent alpine scenery highlights the elegance of a holiday in one of the most prestigious ski resorts in Europe. In the 1929 photograph, passers-by in Leningrad carefully study the posters on the door of a public building. Horse-drawn carriages and horse-drawn carriages can be seen on the street, reflecting daily life in the late NAP era. A snow removal tractor is working on a snow-covered city street, 1925. Special chains are installed on its wheels for better traction with snow and ice, which allowed the equipment to successfully cope with winter clearing. The Saipan cat, the mascot of the battleship New Mexico, settled on a hammock in the cabin around 1944. The printing press produces fresh sheets of illustrated products. 1926. The picture shows the industrial environment of the printing house and the extensive process of mass replication of printed products. A French woman in a stylish leather jacket and beret rests on a bench in Autumn Park, 1963. This image remains relevant and fashionable, regardless of the decade. Workers of a textile factory in Tiflis, 1931, control the mechanism of unwinding and tension of yarn, a vivid picture of the industrialization of Transcaucasia and the development of light industry in the USSR. A logging crew poses among the sawn trunks of an old long-leaf pine tree in Vernon County, Louisiana, 1904. Narrow-gauge railways were used to transport timber, which accelerated the export of large timber. On board the ship Hermione, in November 1941, sailors smile as they watch their beloved cat snuggled in a small hammock. Cats on military vessels were an integral part of the crew's life, creating a homely atmosphere even far from shore. Two girls pose next to an elegant Cadillac car, 1927. Their outfits reflect the fashion of the jazz era and the beginning of the mass car craze among young women. Scene in Greece, 1965. A woman leads a horse with a cart full of hay, on which sits a man. This plot illustrates the typical village routine, where women often bear most of the work and responsibilities in the family. In the photo from 1930, residents of Leningrad lined up in a long queue at the bakery of the Leningrad Union of Consumer Societies. The scene vividly conveys the atmosphere of food shortages and the daily difficulties of life in the city. 7-year-old Robin Tucker presents a kitten to the crew of a ship during the 1939 World's Fair. Kittens were often taken on ships as a talisman and a symbol of good luck, as well as to fight rodents. In a 1928 photo, Boy Scouts and participants in Native American headdresses pose in front of Pontiac cars, symbolizing the popularity of theme camps and cultural events in the United States. Such scenes reflected a desire for adventure, exploring nature, and an interest in the heritage of the indigenous peoples of America. Hamburg Shipwrights, 1929, pose in a bright and unusual outfit typical of local workers. The look with eye-catching accessories gave rise to the expression "cock of Hamburg," symbolizing ostentatious fashion and self-confidence. In the photo from 1932, workers work in the workshop of the Leningrad aluminum plant, using specialized presses for processing metal blanks. The scene illustrates the industrialization of the USSR and the development of the domestic aluminum industry. In 1929, turkeys from Minnesota were delivered to Washington, specifically for the president's Thanksgiving dinner. The tradition of offering a festive bird to the head of state reflected the significance of this holiday for Americans. In 1954, the famous Togni Circus arrived in Venice, which led to atypical scenes for the city with camels crossing bridges over canals. The spectacular procession of artists and animals through the historic streets became a highlight for locals and tourists. Goodyear Workshop, 1930. Workers use special machines to repair worn-out car tires. Tires are neatly laid out on the shelves and walls, ready for repair, which is typical for the organization of work in car service stations of that era. On a street in an Italian town in 1951, a group of female models discusses passersby, whiling away their free time between shots. The scene reflects the relaxed atmosphere of European life and the emergence of the fashion industry in post-war Italy. Senior sailors J.T. Walker with a dog named Shrapnel and Gamble with a cat named Salvo are on board the ship Sydney in 1940. Pets often accompanied sailors to other ports, becoming faithful mascots of the crew. A group of schoolgirls celebrates the end of the school year by riding in an open-top passenger car, 1930. The girls wave flags, creating an atmosphere of joy and freedom typical of summer holidays. In front of the Cadillac Car Rental Agency, 1932, 3 men are conducting business negotiations next to a luxury open-top car. The elegant architecture of the building and the elegant car emphasize the prestige and success of the business. In 1910, garbage from the carts of the quays of Paris was regularly dumped directly into the Seine, which was considered a common urban recycling practice. Despite the absence of plastic and hard-to-decompose waste, the effects were felt by residents living downstream. A mechanic maintains a car at a service station using a garage pit, 1934. The pit allows you to work freely with the chassis and suspension of the car, without having to lift the entire vehicle. A telephone operator connects the lines on a manual switchboard, 1935. Such work required high concentration and responsiveness to ensure uninterrupted communication between subscribers. Two pilots examined the instrument panel of a light aircraft, 1936. The photo shows the interest in aviation and the development of small aircraft technology in the interwar era. As part of a 1940 advertising campaign, a woman demonstrates the capacity of the trunk of a unique transparent Pontiac car. The prototype with transparent panels was created for car dealerships and was designed to impress the public with technical innovations.